Good morning, everybody. Well, to say that it's a big parliamentary week coming up would be something of an understatement. Speaker Bercow is in a very powerful position because he's the person who will pick what amendments get debated. And there's all sorts of attempts going on. There's the Yvette Cooper amendment, and she, of course, wants to rule out no deal. And in the absence of Mrs May's deal, kick the can down the road, extend Article 50 for about 9 months. We've got Dominic Grieve trying to do something that's not been done in the British Parliament since 1642, and that is namely take away power from the executive. It is, I would have thought, wholly unconstitutional, but that's what Dominic Grieve is trying to do, wrest away from the government control of the whole process. Other amendments that are being put down on the Irish backstop, some to get rid of it completely, others to time limit it, and on and on and on. And we just don't know, as yet, what amendment Speaker Bercow is going to pick. And despite the Queen's plea for everybody to come together, the sides still appear to be as divided as they were. The one slight change is that the people's vote, I think, has lost a bit of momentum. The idea of pushing for a second referendum, I think people are beginning to realise the country doesn't really want it. But hey, I'm saying that as a teaser because at 11 o'clock, Lord Andrew Adonis will be here in the studio, and he, of course, is a fanatical supporter of the People's Vote campaign. I'm going to be asking him about that, and he'll take some calls from you as well. For a long time now, I have thought that the most likely outcome of all of this was that Article 50 got extended, because nothing actually would be agreed at all. They'd find it all too difficult and want to kick that can. I do see there's perhaps a slight change in the weather. We won't get it fully this week, but I'm beginning to feel that Jacob Rees-Mogg, many other Brexit-supporting MPs and commentators are saying, look, even though we don't need to pay $39 billion, even though there's no actual promise of any trade deal or anything in the future, if we can just get rid of this wretched backstop, which could keep us trapped in perpetuity inside a customs union, if we could just get rid of that, then we will, with a heavy heart, support Theresa May's deal. Now, Jean-Claude Juncker says, oh, no, you can't do that. You know, if you drop the backstop, you've got to stay permanently in a customs union. But I'm beginning to think Europe might give something on this, and if they do, Mrs May would get her deal through. I think the odds, which were heavily in favour at the bookmakers of extension this time last week, the odds are beginning to shorten on the idea that Mrs May can get something through. But the truth is, no one really knows what on earth is going to happen this week. So I'm asking you, what do you think will happen? And if you think delay still looks the most likely outcome, call 0345 6060 973. Or maybe, like me, you see some prospect of Mrs May's deal perhaps getting through. If it's changed, text to 84850. And please, if you think a second referendum is a winner, then please tweet using the hashtag Farage and LBC at LBC. And of course, Facebookers, you can comment too. And I think there's so much talk between politicians and journalists and journalists and journalists. The great thing about LBC is you, the great British public, get your chance to have your say. And we're going to start with Andrew, who's calling from Warwick. Good morning, Andrew.
Good morning, Nigel. Good morning.
Good morning.
I must admit, I'm absolutely dumbfounded and most disappointed at Jacob Rees-Mogg's response. This whole deal. I mean, remember, you very correctly said that Theresa May had flown, sort of last thing at night to go and prostrate herself in front of Juncker. And
it was actually a couple of quick corrections, Andrew. She left Downing Street at 4:15 on the morning of the 8th of December 2017 to go to meet Mr. Barnier, because he, an unelected bureaucrat, had set our elected leader a deadline.
Yeah, and the thing is, this whole deal is 500 plus pages of dense legalese written by EU lawyers. Why on earth do we think that the backstop is the only trap in this 500 pages of legalese.
I agree.
And if we just knock that down, everything else will be fine. It's crazy.
Andrew,
these are the same people that wrote the Lisbon Treaty.
I agree with you, and if you delve into that 585 pages, which is what it is, you find all sorts of commitments in terms of defence, security, etc., let alone the 39 billion, and I could go on. Andrew, it's not just a bad deal, it's the worst deal in history. But here's the logic from Jacob, Nadine Dorries and others. They say, look, unless we get some sort of agreement on a deal, we will not get Brexit, because the other side are going to drag this out for year after year after year if we don't leave the European Union on March the 29th, and they will probably, in those circumstances, put the country through the agony of a second referendum. That's the reason that you've seen a shift of position. It's kind of a take what we can now and try and sort the rest out in the future. But, and here's where the backstop is so important, Andrew. With the backstop, we couldn't sort anything out in the future, could we?
Well, can I ask you just one question that nobody seems to have asked yet? And I apologise if it's a stupid one. But no government can tie the hands of future governments. Why are we not able to take the agreement in a whole and then under a later parliament turn round in the same way as we're talking about the 1973 European Communities Act? Just turn around and say, well, we're repealing it. Thanks very much. We're leaving.
Well, I agree with you. The British Constitution has always been that no parliament may bind its successor. But when you sign up to European treaties, and that one was in fact in the end ratified in 72, breaking international treaties is not an easy thing to do. And parliaments say, well, we can't get out of it because there's a treaty. And one of the problems with this withdrawal agreement is we're effectively signing another treaty. Andrew, of course, you're right. With political will, you can change anything in the future. But unless we get, Andrew, a radically different group of politicians into Westminster, we could be tied for a long time.
I just think that we've lost what we used to be as a country, and I think the more that we advertise that on the world stage, the worse things are going to get.
I find it difficult to disagree with that. I think we're becoming a bit of an international laughingstock. Friends of mine in America and Australia are saying, what has happened to your country? You used to be a great country. You can't even manage 2.5 years on to get out of the European Union. Andrew, I understand your frustrations with all of it, and I agree with you. It is a rotten deal. Let's ask John, a new caller from Borough. Good morning.
Good morning, Nigel.
So what do you think's going to happen, John?
Well, I think they'll delay it so they can come up with another name for a second referendum. They've got the meaningful vote, the public vote, the people's vote. They'll come up with something else that eventually might convince more people to vote to stay. Because they're conniving, aren't they?
Well, conniving, absolutely. There's all sorts of conniving going on, and Speaker Bercow appears to be in the middle of much of it. John, I understand what you're saying, but they do, and this is something that I'll debate with Andrew Adonis at 11. But the evidence, John, is number one, that the public don't really want a second referendum, and number two, they would only really call for it if they thought they were going to win it, and that's by no means certain, is it?
Not at all. Not at all. It's definitely not certain. But I'm an ardent Brexiteer.
Yep.
But I would vote to stay in the EU if we get rid of our government and let them rule us. So you don't need another bunch of wage thieves, do we, really? That's something no one else has put forward, as far as I can remember.
Well,
how many tiers of government have we already got, Is there still quangos? Are they still about? I'm not sure.
Oh gosh, there are all sorts of quangos out there with enormous power. Anybody running a business, down your street will be aware of all sorts of regulatory authorities that have got the ability to come in and close you down. We've got all of that. John, we are massively overgoverned, and Westminster, as a member of the European Union, Westminster, frankly, has been a bit like a local authority. Some things we're in charge of, but many big things we're not. John, do you think in the end, John, do you think in the end that Brexit is going to happen?
I really don't know. I hope it does, but I don't know. But there's only one worse thing than losing control, and that's giving control to someone else. One more thing.
Yeah.
It cost, I see a programme last night, and it cost in today's money, £37 billion to rebuild London after the Great Fire of London.
Yeah.
So, and we're going to send him $39 billion every year. Is that what?
Well, not every year, John. Over a period of a couple of years. And John, there has been a bit of inflation since 1666, but I get the point. John, thank you. And John, being honest, he just doesn't know what is going to happen. I think Brexit will be delayed and then either cancelled or watered down. And I'm hopping mad about it. How flipping dare they? Please encourage your listeners to complain about the Cooper Amendment to their MPs. It may just be enough to get it blocked, says Chris in Reigate. And Chris, reflecting some of the upset and some of the anger that is genuinely out there in our country at the moment. On Twitter, I get Theresa May is playing a dangerous game, leaking ridiculous claims about martial law in order to frighten MPs into voting for her deal. Well, Patrick, you're absolutely right, and it is quite extraordinary that the UK is ready to declare martial law to avert no-deal chaos. I mean, this is the government putting this out, which shows you they've never been sincere when they said that no deal was better than a bad deal. What she's actually saying is a bad deal is better than no deal. And you would think that Brexit was going to turn us into a siege economy. I mean, the whole thing is ludicrous. I promise you, BMW will want to go on selling their cars here. And the bottle of Rhone that I sipped from last night, that French producer is still going to want to go on selling it in this country. And they will. And the president of the Port of Calais says there will be no delays, even with a no-deal WTO Brexit. This is scaremongering of the most astonishing and, can I say, wholly irresponsible type. You're listening to the Nigel Farage Show here on LBC, and the time now is 10:15.
LBC.
Make 2019 your healthiest year yet. Free inside Sunday's Mail on Sunday, the Wellness 100, 100 ingeniously simple steps to complete mind and body happiness. A superb glossy 12-page guide inside You magazine. Expert tips to reduce stress, sleep better and feel happier. Plus, get your boost of free vitamin D tablets worth £2.29 from Boots. The Wellness 100, free inside Sunday's Mail on Sunday. My Mail membership and 15 Nectar points required. See newspaper for details.
At UKME, our chauffeur service is 6-star. Just like the package we offer our drivers. Join the company that treats its drivers like VIPs. Apply today at ukme.co.uk.
Dads. They're often the first person in the firing line when the Wi-Fi isn't working. But with BT Complete Wi-Fi, only we guarantee a signal in every room. Billy can fight ogres in the bedroom, Becky can watch her beauty vloggers in the bathroom, and Mum can do whatever she likes, wherever she likes. Naturally. Join today. It's $39.99 a month on an 18-month contract with $9.99 delivery. BT customers can upgrade with BT Plus. BT, be there.
New customers, CPI increase starting 2020. $44.49 a month from month 19, up to 3 discs to guarantee Wi-Fi or £20 off your bill.
Drivers, this should raise a smile. Right now at QuickFit, we're offering free winter safety checks. We'll look over your tyres, battery, lights and more to make sure your car is safe on the road this winter. Book online or head down to your local QuickFit today and drive away happy, whatever the weather.
Just imagine you're on a virgin holiday in Jamaica, speeding down a mountainside on the Mystic Mountain bobsled, or you're jumping into the refreshing waters of the Duns River Falls before you take an exhilarating shower under one of its waterfalls. Can you imagine it yet? How about with less to pay? Does that help? Thought so. The Virgin Holiday sale ends soon. Play more, spend less. Visit our travel experts at your local store at All Protected.
Get a Red Entertainment SIM plan with a massive 25 gig of data, unlimited minutes and texts, plus 12 months entertainment on us. Now only £25 a month. The Vodafone Big Winter Sale. Go online or in-store today. The future is exciting. Ready? Vodafone. Standard UK numbers, 12-month agreement, credit check and RPI increase apply. See vodafone.co.uk/terms. Ends 4th of Feb.
Calling all hard-working minicab drivers. Are you the very best London has to offer? Yes? Then Greyhound Cars, one of South London's oldest and most progressive minicab companies, want to speak to you. Spend less time travelling to jobs and more time earning money. With a very busy day circuit, we have high demand and are now offering great bonuses and mileage rates for the very best drivers. You could pay as low as 10% commission. Start today at greyhoundcars.co.uk.
Leading Britain's conversation. LBC, The Nigel Farage Show.
Ever since Mrs May agreed on the 8th of December 2017 to the backstop, she's been in trouble. Brexit has been in trouble because the choice we're being asked to make is either effectively to cede a part of our country or to be stuck inside effectively the European Union in everything but name only. Is there any chance of getting anything on the backstop? Well, I was very interested. The Taoiseach, the Irish Prime Minister, Leo Varadkar, he was at Davos this week. Well, of course he would be, wouldn't he? That's the annual love-in that the globalists have up on a mountain. And I think he was really just showing off to the audience because he said that if Britain was to leave without a deal, there would need to be troops on the border, and they all cheered him because isn't he wonderful and he supports the European project. Something that was so embarrassing that Ireland's Europe Minister, Helen McEntee, had to get up the next day and said, of course, there won't be a hard border. And it's fascinating what happened this week because perhaps the biggest development this week was that Mr Barnier was asked about a WTO Brexit and what would happen on the Irish border. And he said, well, we would need to put technology in place. We would need, if we were doing some checks for regulatory reasons, to do them away from the border. This, of course, actually was what was called the Max Fax scheme. So basically, Barnier himself was saying, we don't need a backstop. There are technical ways around all of this. And I notice that the Lithuanian president said, let's get on with it. Whether there's a deal or no deal, Britain needs to leave on March the 29th. And you wonder, if we did go for an extension of Article 50, whether or not she might veto it, because she would have the power to do it. The Polish also saying that maybe some concessions should be made to the Brits. You see, looking at this, I do think there is the possibility that Mrs May will get some sort of time limit on the backstop, some sort of concession that'll come from Brussels. And if she gets that, well, the vast majority of the Tory Brexiteers will vote for the deal. And that would mean that the deal would then come for the final vote to Strasbourg in March. By the way, I'm not saying that I'd vote for it, because I think even without the backstop, it is a pretty awful deal. Carl on Facebook says, you knew this would happen, as did we. The Tory Brexiteers are really there to play good cop, bad cop. And Steve says, get this new party started. I can't vote for any of them. They're not electable. Let's go to Paul, who's a new caller from Bristol. Good morning, Paul.
Good morning, Nigel.
Good morning, welcome. So what do you think is going to happen, Paul?
I think the writing's been on the wall for quite some time. I believe that they're going to take no deal off the table. I believe that they're going to defer Article 50. And I also believe that eventually they're going to end up making a stay in the EU. And I've seen this coming for quite some time. Makes me very angry. I saw it coming from the minute Theresa May put in place the backstop.
Paul, when you say they're going to make us stay in the EU, well, the only way they could do that would be if they just, and John Major has been almost advocating this, I find it extraordinary, but it would be just simply to revoke Article 50, to say, that's it, we're cancelling it, we're staying in. I
wouldn't be surprised.
Paul, they can't do that. Can you imagine? Can you imagine what that would do? I mean, the Conservative Party would literally be finished at that point.
I was going to say, I've been a Conservative voter all my life. I've never considered anyone other than Conservative. But I now feel politically homeless. I believe that the party that I've put my trust in all those years do not represent my feelings. And one of the reasons I've come online to talk to you is to share my anger on national radio, because I don't think anything's ever made me so angry in my life. I'm not a political person, but this whole episode has made me very, very angry.
Paul, I can't believe that you're right when you talk about revoking Article 50. If you are, there will be hell to pay. There will be a complete change in British politics. Paul, what would you say what would you say if Mrs May got some concessions, some time-limited concessions on the backstop, or another solution was found, and her deal then went through? Would you then be satisfied?
No, I wouldn't, because if you've got an agreement which consists of 550 pages, the majority of that is going to be legal jargon, as you've already said, and it's going to give us less flexibility to negotiate in the future. And it also means that we're going to have another 2 years of this on the TV. We're going to hear about it every day on the news. We're going to hear it on Question Time. And people are fed up, and they just want to get on with it, and they just want to get out. We all voted to leave, and leave means leave. I've got a suggestion, Nigel, with how they can move forward with this, and I think it's quite a sensible one.
Yep, go on.
Well, I think that there should be another general election, and I think every party should field two candidates. One that believes in Remain, and one that believes in Leave. And then let the people decide, knowing that there are two candidates.
That's
knowing
quite, yeah. So there'd be two.
What each one stands for.
So there'd be two Tory candidates in each seat and two Labour candidates in each seat.
Yes. So you put your tick in the box for which MP you want, whether it's Leave or Remain, and then they total up all the votes, and they elect the party with the most seats, and then they put in that seat the politician with the most votes from the public, based on Leave and Remain.
It's a fun idea, Paul. It ain't going to happen, but it's a fun idea, and the results will be fascinating. Thank you very much indeed for your call. And Paul there saying he's not particularly political. He's never called a radio show before. He just feels so angry and so let down by our politicians. And there's so many of you out there saying that. Nigel, we all know they'll kick it down the road until there's some other big event commanding the headlines, then quickly slip in an awful capitulation to Brussels in the safe knowledge that we, the slowly boiled frogs, won't notice, says Rob. May seems to think that if she sorts out the backstop, it's all going to be fine. The whole thing stinks, says Steve from Sutton. No deal and Leave on the 29th of March. We'll be okay. We'll prosper after a short time of confusion, says Jean in Reading. Jean, I've absolutely no doubt in my head that a clean break would be absolutely fine. We would negotiate a trade deal very, very quickly. But there might be a way through the middle of this, Jean. There might be a way through the middle of this that could solve the backstop. It could just be that the World Trade Organization could act as an honest broker. And I'll talk more about that over the course of this hour. Kim is a new caller from Keynsham. Good morning.
Good morning, Nigel. Nigel, unfortunately, I don't think there is a way through the backstop. And the reason I say that is that all 27 nations have to vote to change the treaty on the backstop agreement. And while there are several countries that are saying, yes, they can see changes or alterations being made to the backstop, there's one country leader, that's Leo Varadkar, who has already blatantly said that he will not make any allowances and will not allow there to be any changes to the backstop. And that means that basically there will be no changes whatsoever. And he has his reasons. He knows what his reasons are. And so do many of the politicians in Northern Ireland know what those reasons are. And that quite clearly is that he has ultimate aims, and for the past 60 years, so do many of the politicians in Northern Ireland, Southern Ireland. He's preparing this week for a referendum of his own to reunite Ireland. And on the other thing I'd like to speak about is the extension.
Kim, just a quick point on that.
Yeah.
And I personally think that Varadkar's massively overplayed his hand on this. It's as if he's really genuinely putting the interests of Brussels ahead of the interests of all those people in Ireland who export to the United Kingdom. But, you know, Brussels are very, very good at making small countries do what they want. I mean, I can see sort of Juncker and Barnier taking him aside if they do decide to make concessions. So, well, look, Leo, you know, we know you're very unhappy about this, but you know, if you were to try and stop us making this concession, we would push immediately for a unified corporation tax rate across the whole of the European Union, which Varadkar knows would then mean the advantage that Ireland's got will be gone. What I'm saying to you, Kim, is there are ways of horse trading.
There are, but do you also know that there's so many Europeans and there are so many English people that have their company headquarters in Ireland for the exact reason that they have such a low tax rate.
Absolutely.
And so they're not going to do that because they're going to lose their money. You know, if something like 70% of the European economy, the Europeans' richest people have their money absconded away in Ireland for that exact reason. So they're not going to spike their,
but that's the threat Brussels could make. That's the point I'm making.
They could make it, but Ireland knows that they're not going to do it. But on the other,
I don't know. I don't know. In fact, it is a very clear aim of the European Union that they want actually taxation to be harmonised across the whole of Europe. To some extent, they've done it already with VAT. So I don't agree with that. Kim, you have one more point that you wanted to make.
Very quickly on the extension. If we wanted to extend the leaving the European Union. Again, we have absolutely no say in that whatsoever. England has no say. It's only the European Union can extend it. And they've already told us that we have to have very special circumstances. And they've listed that we can only extend leaving the European Union on the grounds of a second referendum or an election. So again, 27 nations, they're not going to allow us. They're going to turn around and say, no, you can't extend. You're leaving on the 29th of March.
Well, it's all up for negotiation, but you're right. You know, we are very much in their hands. We could apply for an extension and they could say no, and then we'd face a very difficult choice. And maybe Brussels could do that to us to try and force a second referendum. But, Kim, I think there's an economic reality that is now kicking in across Europe. And I think even Brussels is now beginning to feel it. Kim, great call. Thank you very much indeed. And Drew says, anything other than no deal is a renegotiated membership on worse terms. The Gilets Jaunes, are they the precursor to Frexit? Well, not quite yet, but the European elections are going to be absolutely fascinating. OK, it's 10:30. You're listening to The Nigel Farage Show. It's time for the news with Lisa Aziz.
Ireland's Minister for Europe says she can't countenance there being a hard border on the island even if there is no deal Brexit. It's as Downing Street confirms the civil service is investigating preparations for a no-deal Brexit, including the army taking control and soldiers on the streets of the UK. Authorities in the Philippines say 20 people have been killed by two separate bomb explosions which were detonated at a cathedral. Those killed were a combination of worshippers and security services. A woman injured in a car accident with Prince Philip earlier this month says she's chuffed to have received a letter of apology from the Duke. In it, he explains how his vision was impaired by the sun being bright and low in the sky at the time of the collision. LBC weather, sunshine and showers across the northeast and southeast of England, dry elsewhere, a high of 7 degrees.
This is LBC.
When Car Giant has a sale, we make it a giant one. And this year we're celebrating 40 years with our biggest sale. And more than 6,000 cars in stock at our lowest prices. Car Giant is London's largest used car dealership. Giant choice, giant savings. The Car Giant sale, now on. Find out more at cargiant.co.uk.
It's how London buys its cars. Car Giant.
This is How to Holiday, and this is Royal Caribbean's one big sale. Enjoy all-inclusive cruise fares with our best ever drinks package in over 250 destinations worldwide. Book now with deposits from just £75 per person. Visit royalcaribbean.co.uk or contact your travel agent. Royal Caribbean, one big sale now on. Eligible staterooms on selected sailings of 6 nights or more, departing between March 1st, 2019 and December 31st, 2020. Book by March 4th. Conditions apply. At all protected.
An amazing kitchen, an amazing bathroom, an amazing hallway. At Amazing Tiles, our range of porcelain, ceramic and bespoke tiles can make any home amazing. Right now, buy 5 metres or more of plain tiles and get a third off the retail price. Visit our showroom and warehouse at Park Royal Road, London, or call 0208 83 84 900. Make your home amazing at amazingtiles.com.
Are you about to put your audit out to tender? How will you decide which accountants to select? Whether you decide to spend more or less, go bigger or perhaps smaller, what you really need to do is choose the one best suited to your company. In which case, you should arrange a free meeting with Barnes Rofe. We know that every client has different needs because we spend the time to get to know them personally. Contact us at barnesrofe.com. Barnes Rofe, Clever accountants for business.
Calling all hard-working minicab drivers. Are you the very best London has to offer? Yes? Then Greyhound Cars, one of South London's oldest and most progressive minicab companies, want to speak to you. Spend less time travelling to jobs and more time earning money. With a very busy day circuit, we have high demand and are now offering great bonuses and mileage rates for the very best drivers. You could pay as low as 10% commission. Start today at greyhoundcars.co.uk.
What if you could sail into a world where anything's possible? A world where every day brings something new? What if you could feel on top of the world no matter where you are? With Celebrity Cruises you can. Book your Celebrity Cruise now and enjoy complimentary drinks plus savings of up to £700 on selected 2019 sailings. The world is open. The sail is on. Visit celebritycruises.co.uk today or contact your travel agent. ABTA and ATOL protected.
Leading Britain's conversation, The Nigel Farage Show. Tweet at LBC using the hashtag Farage on LBC.
You know, I do worry, looking at what people like Dominic Grieve and others are trying to do, I do worry, actually, about our whole democratic system in this country. It seems that there are many of our politicians who basically think voters are stupid and that they know best. And that really, really worries me. And whilst we're all trying to predict what will happen, here is one little possible idea. I know Nick Ferrari's been talking about this on The Breakfast Show, but I do think this needs to be looked at and thought about. The World Trade Organization, they're based in Geneva. They're there to facilitate easier trade around the world. And they're very happy to act as honest brokers. Under Article 24 of their own rulebook, two parties can agree to go to them and say, right, help us negotiate a comprehensive free trade deal. And they will say, yep, we're happy to do that. And in the meantime, you would carry on trading on the same terms that you are now, namely tariff-free trade. And that would buy us certainly 2 years, and some think possibly as much as 10 years, whilst we work out a comprehensive trade deal for the future. Wouldn't that be a lot better? Because it would obviate the need for any Irish backstop of any kind at all. And I've got a feeling that this is an idea that's going to grow rapidly over the course of the next few days. There are ways around this. We just need a British government with the will and the wit to try and do this differently. Tristan is a new caller from Luxembourg. Hi, Tristan.
Morning, Nigel. How are you?
Good morning. Luxembourg, where, of course, Jean-Claude Juncker was the Prime Minister for 19 years. He's a bit of a hero in Luxembourg, isn't he?
Oh, I've been in the same room with him while we've been drinking.
Oh, really? Oh, gosh. The thing I can't get over, Tristan, is how this man, who is the high priest of a united Europe with everything being harmonised and regularised, how he was able to turn Luxembourg into a place where corporation tax you could negotiate directly with him, where petrol and diesel are about 35% cheaper than they are over the border in France, where alcohol's half the price and cigarettes are almost free. I mean, how on earth was he able to make Luxembourg this sort of tax haven within the European Union?
Well, yeah, it's strange with it, but I mean, over here, you know, the only people who can vote in general elections are people who are Luxembourgish, and you know yourself that, you know, a lot of the population of Luxembourg are expats, so they don't get a say in the vote. So people like myself, even though we work here, we cannot vote. So, you know, it's only about 35-40% of the population can actually vote in the general election. The rest are expats.
I was fascinated when the referendums were taking place on the EU constitution, and you remember famously the French and Dutch voted no. Well, Luxembourg had a referendum, and at the time, about 18% of Luxembourg's GDP were the European institutions that are based there. And I turned up and I spoke at the only no meeting that took place in the whole campaign, and a couple of old professors and me and a Danish politician, and the other side had advertising all over Luxembourg. And you know, even in Luxembourg, 44% voted no to the EU constitution, which I thought was fascinating.
Oh, that's very interesting. I didn't know that.
2005 it was. Yep, no, absolutely. Right, now I'm going off on a slight tangent, but whenever Luxembourg, Jean-Claude Juncker come along, it's fun to talk about. How did you find him socially, Tristan?
Yeah, very good. I mean, as you yourself say, you know, you think you say two things: would you go out for a drink with him, and would you give them a job? And I think you enjoy going out for a drink with him. He is actually quite a funny guy.
He's a very funny guy. So, Tristan, what's going to happen? Come on, give us your crystal ball gaze from Luxembourg.
Well, I think what's going to happen is it's going to get kicked down the road. Unfortunately, something has to happen with this backstop. I've been very angry about this backstop. I was explaining to my French wife all about it, and I said to her, "Listen, it would be if Spain was to leave, if there was a Spexit, like a Spain exit, it would be just like the European Union turning around and saying, okay, Spain, you can leave, but we want to keep Catalonia. What do you think Spain will say? They'll say, not on your Nelly."
Yeah.
So this is the thing about the backstop, and what I think will happen is it'll get kicked down the road, but I think they have to do something about this backstop, and I think come the 29th of March, midday, they will buckle. However, I think what has to happen is we have to get to the 29th of March, and I don't think we have a strong enough government, especially Theresa May, who will get us there. She will buckle before that, and that's the thing I worry about.
I wonder, Tristan, when we look back on this in many, many years to come, whether signing up to the backstop on the 8th of December 2017 will be seen as Mrs May's Munich moment. The moment.
Yes.
No, I really mean it. I really do mean it.
Yeah. I mean, well, what's annoying for me is, you know, I'm a Democrat, so most people over here, all the Brits I see, they all say, oh, it's a tragedy, we're leaving, etc., etc. You can have arguments for both ways. I was saying to my wife, you know, the Brexit, the idea of Brexit is not actually a bad idea. Making your own rules, making your own laws. Some people might not agree with it, but that's not a bad idea. What's been a mess has been the actual negotiation, which has been terrible. But I've started getting a bit disillusioned with politics. You know, not even before. It first started off with the Scottish referendum, and you saw how we treated each other during the Scottish referendum, etc. And what I'm so annoyed about is if it goes to a second referendum, that's just totally undemocratic. People must be laughing about us over the world. I mean, how can we go to other countries like Saudi Arabia and Iran and preach democracy when they can turn around and say, well, you know,
that's a very
the word
good
pot,
point.
kettle and black spring to mind.
I said a few minutes before I took your call, Tristan, I said I'm worried about the future of democracy itself, and I genuinely am. Thanks for your call, Tristan. Great stuff. Pauline says the backstop is just stalling Brexit. Other countries have borders, they don't have backstops. But funny how the EU makes this an issue. Well, yes, that is true, and you know, you can go back and forth from Monaco and into France, and there are Italian enclaves in Switzerland, and all of that is true. There is, of course, the sensitivity of history, and we do see the emergence of this real IRA group. But frankly, they're just looking for trouble whatever happens with Brexit, it seems to me. Ruben is a new caller from Preston. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Nigel. Nice to talk to you.
Good to talk to you. So come on then, tell us what's going to happen. Tell us where to put our money.
In gold.
One day, Ruben, I have to say this, one day, if you actually look at the levels of indebtedness across the world, and we can even include...
it's 3 times the global GDP.
Yeah, and even China has fallen now hugely into this trap. And if the big credit squeeze and the problems of 2008, the near meltdown of the financial system in 2008 was caused by indebtedness, we're in much worse shape now. And I've no idea whether this is in 5 years or 10 years or whatever it is, but at some point, Ruben, gold will be a lot higher than it is right now. I do agree with that. But look,
absolutely.
Look, this is not a business chat. I'd love to do one, but it's not. It really isn't.
Honestly, Nigel, I think we're about to have Brexit stolen from us by the MPs. Speaking to the MP for Hyndburn on Christmas Day, first thing he said as we walked through the door was, "Are you a Remainer or an idiot?" I said, well,
really?
really, truly.
And that was on Christmas Day, you say?
That was on Christmas Day, dropping presents off. And it was. I had to remind him that he was voted 66% in favour of leave, and that he was voted in.
But
to
Reuben, you're clearly a cretin, Reuben. You clearly don't know what.
Absolutely.
There you are. So they're going to steal it from us, are they?
I think so. I think if you listen to the rhetoric in Parliament, and I try not to watch the BBC, the mainstream media are the enemy of the people. Absolutely, they're espousing all this fear, and what is there to be scared of? We were once one of the, if not the strongest nation in the world.
Yeah.
What makes them think that we need our hands holding by a lot of unelected bureaucrats that really do not have our best interests at heart?
If Brexit, Reuben, if it is stolen from us, and as I say, that would be revoking Article 50, and I can't believe it would happen, because the consequences would be huge.
Yeah, absolutely. I would never, ever trust another election again. And if Labour get in, and God help us if they do, can we have another general election because the minority didn't like it?
I know. And that is the extent to which we are traducing democracy in the country that's had one of the longest serving continuous parliaments in the world. And here we've got, for the first time, Reuben, since 1642, people like Dominic Grieve wanting to completely change the role of Parliament. It is a disgrace. Reuben, thanks for your good humour in the midst of the upset. Peter from Lancashire says, Barnier can dismiss the backstop in the event of a no deal, but he can't tweak the withdrawal agreement to get this awful agreement through. The border solution was suggested by David Davis 12 months ago. Well, what I'm saying, Peter, is I think there's a chance that Barnier may make some concessions on it. And hey, if we could get the WTO to guarantee us for a few years tariff-free trade, we wouldn't have any tensions at all when it comes to tariff. I mean, not that they are very serious anyway. So there may be, just may be some solutions here. And if she gets some solutions, then I think Jacob Rees-Mogg and most of the Tory Brexiteers have made it clear they would support the deal. And I suspect quite a lot of Labour MPs in those circumstances would support the deal as well. It seems incredible, doesn't it? We can be talking just 2 weeks on from a loss of 230 votes about a possibility of getting it through. But I think many they're so tired of the behaviour of the Lord Adonises and others, who's coming in at 11, that they'll almost sign up to anything if it gets us out of the European Union. You're listening to the Sunday edition of the Nigel Farage Show here on LBC, and it's now 10:45.
LBC at the weekend. Majid Nawaz.
I bring to you news regarding the leader of Her Majesty's opposition. Yes, indeed, one Dominic Grieve. That was a deliberate joke. It does appear to me to be the case that Dominic Grieve is doing a better job than Jeremy Corbyn himself.
Leading Britain's conversation. Majid Nawaz. Today from 12 on LBC.
So, Dan, now you're spending less time on your accounts. I hear you've joined a winter swimming club. How's that going?
Jeez! Hold. Lunatics. VAT is going digital in April. Zero online accounting software makes submitting your digital VAT return easy, so you'll have more time to enjoy the British weather. So, I'm really enjoying it. Get ready for HMRC's Making Tax Digital for VAT. Try Zero free for 30 days. Ask your accountant or visit xero.com.
The best place for sleepyheads is in their bridge bed in bed.
We love our sleep, and even though we use them less, we do still love real shops where we can get real customer service. Get the best of both. Buy your next new bed at Bridge Bedding, an incredible choice of beds and mattresses from the best-known brands in the UK, ensuring a great night's sleep. Bridge Bedding, Leigh-on-Sea, Hornchurch, or online at bridgebeding.com.
The best place for sleepyheads is in their bridge bed in bed.
Dads. They're often the first person in the firing line when the Wi-Fi isn't working. But with BT Complete Wi-Fi, only we guarantee a signal in every room. Billy can fight ogres in the bedroom, Becky can watch her beauty vloggers in the bathroom, and Mum can do whatever she likes, wherever she likes. Naturally. Join today. It's $39.99 a month on an 18-month contract with $9.99 delivery. BT customers can upgrade with BT Plus. BT, be there.
New customers, CPI increase starting 2020. $44.49 a month from month 19, up to 3 discs to guarantee Wi-Fi or £20 off your bill.
Your company's doing pretty well. Your tax position's okay.
So, what's keeping you awake at night?
To face the future with confidence, talk to Vision Consulting. We've expanded from Gants Hill to the Gherkin, with clients from the fishmonger to the multi-million-pound property investment company. And our growth as a firm of chartered accountants and registered auditors is based on our passion for our clients' business.
Have confidence in your accountant. See visionconsulting.co.uk.
Make 2019 your healthiest year yet. Free inside Sunday's Mail on Sunday, the Wellness 100, 100 ingeniously simple steps to complete mind and body happiness. A superb glossy 12-page guide inside You magazine. Expert tips to reduce stress, sleep better and feel happier. Plus, get your boost of free vitamin D tablets worth £2.29 from Boots. The Wellness 100, free inside Sunday's Mail on Sunday. My Mail membership and 15 Nectar points required. See newspaper for details.
The Nigel Farage Show on LBC.
Today is Holocaust Remembrance Day, and I think that's really quite important. The number of people still living who were directly involved in the Holocaust has, of course, been whittled down to a very, very few, and their testimony is always quite extraordinary to hear. But I was quite surprised in some ways to see some polling that was done to say that 1 in 20 now in the UK don't believe that it happened at all, and that 20% of us, on top of that, think the figure was less than 2 million Jews that were killed, when actually it was about 6. So that surprises me, because certainly when I was at school, and I'm in my mid-50s, we were taught about the Holocaust. I know my children have all been taught about the Holocaust, and not just one lesson, they've actually studied this stuff. So how can it be 25% of the population have no idea of the magnitude or don't believe it's happening at all? I wonder, is this linked to the genuine spread of anti-Semitism that we're seeing throughout our society? It's something that I think we want to get some answers to. Back to the agony of Brexit, the week coming up. Look, I have been saying for about 9 months that I think Article 50 getting extended is the most likely outcome, and I've stuck with that line all the way through. But I'm now beginning to see the sands of this shifting. I'm beginning to think that, bizarrely, Mrs May might be in a stronger position than a loss for her withdrawal agreement of 230 votes 2 weeks ago might suggest, if there's some give on the other side. I'm not saying I support this, but I'm saying that's how I see this beginning to go. Rob is a new caller from Petersfield. Good morning, Rob.
Good morning.
So, what's going to happen?
I think what's going to happen is that, providing no deal does not come off the table, the EU will give in to the backstop very late in March, and will have a rushed Theresa May-like deal through. But I think there are 2 other aspects that are very important. One is this growing swell for Article 24 of the WTO won't work, because the EU will claim that includes freedom of movement, common customs union, single market, payments, ECJ, which won't be acceptable to any Brexiteers. But then the ultimate solution for the Northern Ireland border problem is actually the EU's own paper, Smart Borders 2, which explains from the EU Parliament exactly how you can do it. And no one's talking about it.
Yeah, it was published back in 2017 after extensive work by the European Parliament, and they published their solution to it. But it almost seemed to me, Rob, that's what Monsieur Barnier was echoing this week.
Well, I hope he is, because it is a solution that they put forward. Seems to me to be entirely sensible, but no one in this country is talking about it.
Well, I think a lot of us have been trying to talk about it, but we've just been not listened to, we've just been shouted down. On Article 24 and WTO, well, that depends how you define things, Rob, doesn't it? You know, you would continue with current trading relationships, not necessarily political ones. So I think there is a way through that.
I would agree if the EU were prepared to negotiate, and they won't be, because it's going to impinge their 4 freedoms.
No. Absolutely. Look, Article 24, WTO brokerage, only works if the EU and us agree to it. And that is, of course, potentially the flaw. Rob, thank you for your thoughts on all of that. Ellis is calling from Manchester. Good morning.
Morning, Nigel. How are you?
I am well. I am beginning to think I'm beginning to think that Mrs May's deal has something of a chance. I hate Mrs May's deal. It's the worst deal in history, but I'm beginning to think that, Alice.
Well, I mean, I have read the withdrawal agreement, all 500 pages of it. It's a riveting read.
Well done, you. Well done.
However, I do actually think, I do think it's probably the best deal that we can get under current circumstances. Providing we get some assurances, all the backstop removed, I think we have to back it, because otherwise you do get the likes of Grieve, etc., who will try and thwart Brexit. You mentioned extending Article 50. I think that's a dangerous game to play. I think once you start extending it,
I know,
then you open the possibility up to extending it again and again and again.
Ellis, I wasn't saying that I wanted it. I was just saying that I thought that if Parliament couldn't find a majority for anything, that it's what would happen.
Yeah, I think under the current deal there can be a majority formed. I think the backstop's the major issue, and I think if that's removed, I think you've already seen this week that Jacob Rees-Mogg, etc., have said they'll back it. One interesting thing that I did know is if you listen to what Airbus was saying this week, they said that the government have been in touch with them and telling them how to make it very clear that no deal would be awful for the economy.
Yes.
And you see this all over the news, etc., of how bad it's going to be. It's going to be apocalyptically bad for us. And I actually think that's Theresa May playing very clever games and saying, look, it's my deal.
Oh, yes.
No deal which is absolutely appalling. So I personally think she'll get it through, just about.
Yeah, well, Ellis, you may be right. Thank you very much indeed for your thoughts. Nigel, yet more scare stories from Remain. This time, the threat of martial law if the UK leaves on WTO terms. The reverse is true, yes. There might be widespread civil unrest and the formation of our own Yellow Jacket movement if May's government betrays us again, says Tad Davison in Cambridge. And I have to say, Tad, I would have thought that the likelihood of people being really angry in the streets was more if we didn't leave at all than if we left on WTO terms, although I don't encourage it at all or for one moment. But it's all about how they try and change the language, crashing out, catastrophe. And you now hear presenters on the BBC using these terms as part of their question. And the other use of change of language that drove me bonkers was our Chancellor of the Exchequer, Philip Hammond, saying a WTO Brexit would be a betrayal of the Brexit vote. How dare he use that word? He's the one who's betraying the Brexit vote, but they're the sort of things we have to live with in a world when you are thought, 52% of you, to be too stupid to decide your own future. Damien is a new caller from Manchester. Good morning, Damien.
Hi, Nigel. Just to regard the last caller as well, he quite rightly mentioned about the Airbus thing, and I was thinking the same thing myself, actually, but I also had a few questions on the Airbus issue, which was... Sorry about that. If Airbus decided to move everything out of the UK, I'm thinking about, like the wings and really specialist parts like that.
Yes.
They're not the kind of things that can just be done overnight. So you're thinking about moving the facilities for it, which would take quite some time, training people, which we're talking at least within a 5-year period.
Yes.
And during that time, Boeing would be silly just to go, that's an opportunity missed. They're going to jump in on that, wouldn't they?
Well,
so Airbus's sort of Project Fear scaremongering is sort of nonsensical.
And Damien, one point to add to that, they've already made the investment in the plant. Why are they going to walk away from that?
They'd be throwing it away, Nigel.
I know.
And there's something else which I thought was very, very suspicious as well with a lot of the politicians we have now. For years they've said, sorry, we can't do this because the EU, and then the voters given the opportunity, and now they go, it's too big for us kind of thing. So, sorry to jump onto two separate projects.
No, that's all right. That's all right. The great thing about these programmes on LBC is caller after caller stimulates yet more thoughts amongst you, amongst me, and amongst everybody, and that's a very, very good thing. So, Damien, where are we going with all of this?
Well, unfortunately, Nigel, I do think that we'll either have that watered-down Theresa May Brexit in name only, which is obviously not what I wanted at all. it's basically, or they may get their opportunity to freeze Brexit altogether, which then brings everything into question. And it really is such a shame, Nigel, isn't it? Because we've had this wonderful opportunity, and now they're trying to disregard. I mean, last week I'd spoken to another one of your colleagues, Majid, who had some wonderful points.
Yeah.
But I did find, this idea of a people's vote is just another excuse just to overthrow
We've had the people's vote, Damien. We had it in 2016.
Exactly.
I know. Damien, have a great Sunday. I'm going to have to move on. Alison says, nobody likes us because we don't give in when we're invaded. Well, that's quite a big, broad historical point. Anthony says, I've got my yellow vest ready, Nigel. We voted out and no deal. Well, lots of very, very strong opinions on this. And some of you predicting that if Brexit gets stopped, there will be appalling social consequences. And one thing I do promise everybody is if Brexit is stolen from us, I should jolly well make sure that there are vehicles that we can support and use without the need to resort to violence. Now, Leslie from Cheshire says, Nigel, please ask Adonis on my behalf why his opinion and vote to remain overrides the opinion and vote of the people. And that's perhaps a very good point. And yes, coming in, he's not here yet, but I hope he's on his way. He promised he was coming. We've got Lord Adonis coming in to the studio. He's a very prominent Blairite, very prominent supporter of the so-called People's Vote campaign. And I can see he's arriving down the corridor now. And I'm going to be asking him, just as Leslie says, why does he think his opinion matters so much more than everybody else's? Is he optimistic that a second referendum is going to happen? Does he think Yvette Cooper's amendment is going to get through and that a WTO Brexit will be taken off the table? I'll debate that with him, but on 0345 6060 973, you can ring up, call and ask him some questions as well.
On your radio, on your phone, and here.
Play LBC.
Leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 11 o'clock, Ireland's Minister for Europe says she can't countenance a hard border with the United Kingdom even if the UK leaves the European Union without a deal. Helen McEntee says both countries' commitment to the Good Friday Agreement means it can't happen.
We're not planning for a border. We have never been planning for a border because it's simply not something that we can countenance. There are obligations there. And again, we're not asking for something different. We're not asking for something new. This has been the case from the very beginning of the negotiations.
It says MPs have been told they may have to work longer hours and miss their February half-term holiday to get Brexit ready for the March 29th deadline. Reports say the government will ask Parliament what extra hours are needed. Separately, Downing Street says the civil service is taking appropriate steps to minimise disruption and ensure the country is prepared in a no-deal Brexit situation. It includes the possibility of martial law, with the army taking control and soldiers on the streets of the UK. And Nigel will be leading Britain's conversation on that story next. At least 20 people have been killed and 80 others injured after 2 bombs went off at a Roman Catholic cathedral on the Philippines island of Jolo. It happened during Sunday Mass. No one has claimed responsibility for the attack. The Daily Telegraph's Asia correspondent Nicola Smith has told LBC it's a complex situation.
It could be Abu Sayyaf, who have pledged allegiance to groups like Islamic State and have links with Al-Qaeda. It could also be linked to an autonomy vote that happened this week in the southern province of Mindanao. The Sulu province, where this bomb happened, they did not vote for autonomy, but most of the rest of the region did. So it could be linked to that as well. It's just a very complicated situation.
The Duke of Edinburgh has reportedly told a woman he is deeply sorry after a collision with his car. Emma Fairweather says she was chuffed to get the apology in a letter from Prince Philip. LBC's Rachel Gerrish reads an extract from it.
The sun was shining low over the main road. In normal conditions, I'd have no difficulty in seeing traffic coming from the Dersingham direction, but I can only imagine that I failed to see the car coming, and I'm very contrite about the consequences.
The Beckhams, Sports Direct's Mike Ashley and Sir James Dyson have made a list of the UK's top taxpayers. Stephen Rubin, a majority shareholder in JD Sports, tops that Sunday Times list with a bill of almost £182 million. Novak Djokovic has won the Australian Open men's singles tennis title. He's beaten Rafael Nadal 6-3, 6-2, 6-3 3 in the final in Melbourne. LBC weather, sunshine and showers across the northeast and southeast of England, dry elsewhere, a high of 7 degrees. From Global's newsroom, for LBC, I'm Philip Chrysikos.
For 1 weekend only, you can buy an approved used car from Volvo Select with 0% APR finance. But they also come with over 100 checks, so no need to kick the tires. A 12-month unlimited mileage warranty, which you probably never use, and the latest software upgrades, which you definitely will. Visit your local retailer this weekend and drive home an approved used Volvo with 0% APR finance. Available on used vehicles up to 4 years old. Participating retailers, 50% minimum deposit on minimum finance amount of £7,000. Conditional sale. Terms, eligibility criteria and return conditions apply. Volvo Car Financial Services.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation. The Nigel Farage Show.
So we head to the UK Parliament this week and we talk a lot about the options that are before the House of Commons this week, and we've been speculating for the last hour as to what we think may or may not happen. We've heard very little about the House of Lords and what role they may or may not play. It'd be useful to get up to speed with that. And joining me to talk through these things, debate these things and take some calls from you is prominent Labour peer, Blairite, and supporter of the so-called People's Vote campaign, Lord Andrew Adonis. Good morning, Andrew.
Good morning, Nigel.
Welcome. This is good because this is how debate ought to be conducted, and it's very, very important. I was asked a question before the break. Leslie from Cheshire said, Nigel, please ask Adonis on my behalf why his opinion and vote to remain overrides the opinion and vote of the people.
My opinion and vote doesn't override them, which is the reason why I'm in favour of people's votes, so that everyone
but
gets
what she's saying is
gets a say, and
but
not
Leslie's saying
just people like me.
But Leslie's saying that we had the vote already.
Yeah, but of course the point about it, which is you and I back and forth the whole time, is that 3 years ago when we had the referendum, we didn't know what the Leave deal was going to be. It's only now that we know it that we can have this people's vote, because people can actually vote on what they see, Theresa May's deal, which you and I agree is a terrible deal. And indeed, if you had known that there was the Theresa May deal 3 years ago, I doubt you would have gone around the country saying that this was the basis on which we shouldn't do Brexit, would you?
But then I'm in a very fortunate...
But that's why we need the people's vote, Nigel, so that you and I can
But I'm in a
both put our
fortunate position,
arguments.
of course, because I've got two options. You've got Mrs May's deal, or we leave on WTO terms, and I'm perfectly happy with that.
Yeah, but
I mean, that's in the legislation.
Yeah, but actually, I think, you see, I've secretly thought that on this people's vote, Nigel, you and I agree, because had you known 3 years ago, and many of the people who campaigned with you, that after this vote, Theresa May would do a deal which would £39 billion for less trade than we've got at the moment, with all these backstop arrangements in Ireland and all that, you would have said in that referendum, don't vote for this. But the point about it is nobody could have known that 3 years ago because there wasn't a deal. Now that we know the
Andrew,
deal now, I think the only way you're going to stop it is through a people's vote. And the only way, of course, I can stop it, those of us who take
So
this...
you want to stop it?
I want to give people the option to stop it, which is the reason why we need the people's vote.
Brexit?
Yeah, I want Remain on the ballots. I've been very clear about that.
But we voted on that already.
No, because 3 years ago we didn't know what the Leave deal would be. Now we know what it is because Theresa May's negotiated. We know the £39 billion
I'm really
and all
sorry
that.
to disappoint
People should
you.
have a say.
I'm sorry to disappoint you, but for the last few weeks of that referendum, I said again and again and again, no deal is better
Yeah, but
than a bad
that was you.
deal.
That was you, Nigel. Boris,
No deal
Boris
is better
was
than a
saying,
bad deal.
Boris was saying that we should stay in the single market and the customs
No,
union.
he wasn't.
He was. He said that repeatedly through the last referendum.
Andrew, that is simply not true.
He said that we should stay in. He said that we should stay in.
When he first converted to the cause of backing Leave, he was very confused over the single market. Within a week, and consistently through that campaign, he said, we're leaving the single market and the customs. And actually, every single leading Leave and Remain campaigner said a vote to leave is a vote to leave the single market.
That's not correct. You and I know that lots of Leave campaigners said that we could stay in the single market and the customs union. So that's the basis on which Theresa May negotiated.
No leading Brexiteer said voting to leave, we would stay in a single market. Not one.
Boris himself said it, and he was besides yourself, he was the leading
he said it
of leaving. But the point about it now is
Andrew,
that
we need to clear this up.
He
said
said
it
that we could
before the
stay.
campaign started.
I don't think people.
And he was a Remainer.
So you expect
he was a Remainer for years.
Yeah, so look, you expect people to pick and choose between different statements that Boris made. Well, that isn't fair on the voters. The voters heard from Boris repeatedly that we would be staying in the single market and the customs union.
Well, I tell you what. Andrew, you are wrong.
That's the reason why we need. That's
that.
Part of the reason why we need a people's vote.
Once the campaign started, Boris was clear. Now, look, we've got a big week coming up in Parliament, so let's deal with some of that, shall we? So, what do you think should happen in the House of Commons this week? What do you want to happen?
Well, it looks to me as if almost any option now requires us to have a longer period of preparation or negotiation. There's nothing that could be done now except for Theresa May's own deal, because of course that could be agreed and be implemented, which could be done by the end of March. If there's going to be a referendum, that requires an extension. If there's going to be a new deal, that requires an extension. I think actually your option, Nigel, a WTO Brexit would require an extension now too, because there would need to be preparations for doing that, and those haven't been made. I mean, I'm in Parliament at the moment, and I can tell you the preparations for what would happen at the end of March, because Theresa May has been, to be blunt, so unprepared for this whole thing, aren't there either. So I think there'll be a majority in Parliament to extend Article 50 so that we don't either crash out at the end of March, or if we go down your path, don't have preparations for it. What happens after that is all up for grabs, and that is the big argument which I think we're going to have.
The Yvette Cooper amendment
will go through. I think it will go through.
And then if Mrs May, failing an amendment to her deal, succeeding on the second or third attempt. So if the Cooper amendment goes through, and if we finish up extending Article 50 by 9 months, that means we're going to fight the European elections this year, doesn't it?
Well, it looks as if that's distinctly possible, doesn't it? You and I debate all the time your pension from the European Parliament. It may be about to get.
You've got the figures wrong.
Well, it may be about to get bigger, because you could have to stand in this European election.
Would you welcome us standing in the European elections?
Well, if the Article 50 period is extended, my own view is that we shouldn't hold European elections until it's clear whether we're staying in the EU or not. I think, do you know my frank view? I think it's absurd us holding elections to a parliament which we might be leaving in a few months. But there is this business of the law, and if the law can't be amended, then it may be that we do have to have them. So I know all of your secret preparations for a new party, Nigel. They may have to come out of the closet quite soon.
They're not so secret now, are they? I mean, I don't want to fight the European elections, but it seems to me the European treaties are written in such a way that we probably would have to. And on this big push of yours for a second referendum, a couple of points on that. It seemed that your own people this week were preparing to put down Sarah Wollaston, Luciana Berger and others, and they were putting down an amendment. They've withdrawn it. Isn't the truth now that the Remain side is actually as split in many ways as the Leave side is? But in that you've got people like you going all out for a second referendum, but there are others who see the damage that would be done in their constituencies, the social damage that would be done by a second referendum. Isn't a second referendum looking a little bit further away this week?
Well, actually, it's not that we're split, but we have the same problem in a curious way as you have, wanting no deal, which is that a lot of people who have been gravitating towards the second referendum as a way of resolving this have been scarified by Theresa May in telling them that the only way you can avoid no deal is to vote for her deal. And what she's trying to do is to rearrange her deal, to try and do some kind of a deal on the backstop so that it pleases people like Jacob Rees-Mogg and co, on the belief that she has, and you'll be able to tell me whether it's true or not because you're closer to him than I am, that Jacob might then vote for her deal if it's amended. And the issue which we have is that for as long as people think that the only other show in town is her deal, because otherwise we're going to crash out with no deal, there isn't a majority for a referendum. Until people are convinced that no deal isn't an option, I think all of the movement will be towards Theresa May and her deal. And the critical person in this will be Jacob Rees-Mogg and that part of the Conservative Party who until now have been saying that they don't like Theresa May's deal either, because it's vassalage. We're paying $39 billion to Brussels, having to implement all their rules, but with no say. All the arguments that in different ways you and I have both been making. I've been making the argument that the better thing to do is to have a seat round the table and to stay. You've been saying we should go out with a clean Brexit. And I think the big big issue in the next few weeks is what will Jacob Rees-Mogg do? Is he going to rally to Theresa May, in which case she may be able to get her deal through,
I think the answer's
or is
simple.
he going to stick with you?
I think the answer's simple. I think if the backstop gets amended or dropped, then I think Jacob and co will, not all of them, but most of them will vote for Mrs May's deal. It will then, of course, come to Strasbourg, where the final vote will be, and I have to say, I will not be voting for it. I tell you what, Lord Adonis, let's go to the public, because, I'm sure you must feel this too. So much of this debate is politicians against politicians, journalists against journalists, and the great thing about LBC is it's the public. And I'm going to go to Paul in Blackburn. Paul, please ask Lord Adonis a question.
The first people's vote took place in 2016. The result was to leave. That result was not enacted. A second referendum would mean that for the Leave viewpoint to be enacted, Leave would have to have won 2 referendums. If Remain wins the second referendum, that means it would have only had to have won 1. How's that fair?
How's that fair?
Well, the situation we're in, Paul, at the moment, if you take your view, because I assume that you're at one with Nigel Farage in wanting to leave without Theresa May's deal. Is that correct, Paul? You don't like Theresa May's deal?
Well, I'm at one with democracy, and I think the people's vote is the best form of democracy that money can buy.
Yeah, but the point about it is, if what you want is Theresa May's deal, then there probably won't be a referendum. We can probably leave on those terms, because if all the Conservative MPs and they, with the DUP from Northern Ireland, have a majority in the House of Commons, if they all vote for it, then there's a majority. The reason why we might have a referendum is because people who take Nigel Farage's view, which is that this deal doesn't work because it still involves us paying 39 billion to Brussels for a less good access to European markets than we've got at the moment, and people who take my deal, which is the best view, which is the best thing to do, is to stay in, both of us are very unhappy with Theresa May's deal. So the question is, if you don't like Theresa May's deal because you don't like paying 39 billion to Brussels for less trade than we've got at the moment, then I think there just may be no alternative but to have a second referendum.
Paul, following up on Paul's point, did you ever respect the result of the referendum? Was there any moment at which you thought, I'm actually going to get behind this because the people have decided? Or did you, from the moment you saw the Sunderland result, say, I'm going to dedicate myself to overturning this?
Well, I thought, you see, the big problem with the referendum 3 years ago is that there wasn't a single Leave proposition on the table.
Or Remain.
Well, I thought...
Or Remain.
Well, there was. We were going to Remain.
What was the Remain proposition?
Yeah, the Remain was David Cameron's deal on immigration, and then we stay in the EU.
But the EU changes every few months.
But they hadn't changed. That was the view.
I mean, they now want a European army.
Yeah, but we're not joining the European army. We're not in the euro.
Actually,
we know the terms
we're
on which
cooperating
we
with it already.
Yeah, but we're not joining it. But the key point, coming back to Paul's question and your question, Nigel, is that I thought what Theresa May would do after this referendum was to go to somewhere like the position of Norway, which was, we're out of the decision-making structure of the EU, but we're very close to them in terms of the economics, so we protect our markets. If she had done that, I think there might have been a consensus, and I would probably then have supported it. Indeed, I didn't say much after the referendum because I just assumed she was going to do it. It's when she said that leaving the EU meant leaving the single market, leaving the customs union, which meant that we'd have fewer markets to sell our goods into and we'd have more unemployment. It's at that point that I thought that this Brexit thing wasn't viable. And of course, you and I have this discussion all the time, but it wasn't clear in the last referendum campaign what Leave proposition there would be. And it's only since we've had that that I think a second referendum has become inevitable. I tell you what,
Remain was by no means the status quo either. You're listening to the Sunday edition of the Nigel Farage Show here on LBC, and it's now 11:15.
This is LBC.
Word in the woods is that 3 little pigs are looking to sell their homes quick. They seem to be in a spot of bother with the big bad wolf called Rick.
Come out, little piggies!
So they spoke to the friendly team at Property Rescue, who can offer a guaranteed sale in as little as 48 hours at a fair price and a cash advance if you need one. Fast forward to living happily ever after. Visit propertyrescue.co.uk. Property Rescue. Fast forward to sold.
For hundreds of years, Indian food has been about sharing great food with the people you love. For over 5 years, Manjal Restaurant have brought North and South India together in the heart of London. And due to its success, now we've come to Chigwell Loughton. Experience the essence of India and make memories with Manjal. Book now at manjalrestaurant.com.
At the AA, we're always trying to make your journey better. Our mechanics fix 8 out of 10 cars at the roadside, usually within 30 minutes of arriving. You could say we're simply the best. Oh, sorry, that's the wrong song. Join today from just £5 a month. Visit theaa.com. The AA, because anything can happen. New customers only. T's and C's apply.
Paul, Winston Wolfe. You're a landlord, and I see you're in a pickle.
Yeah?
Your tenants can't pay the rent, and I'm here to tell you to call the smart guys at Direct Line. Their landlord insurance has rent guarantee of up to $250,000, and they pay until the issue is resolved.
That's a relief.
Now enjoy your pickleball.
Landlord insurance with rent guarantee up to £250,000. Can your landlord insurance do that? Cover purchase as part of legal expenses add-on. Qualifying criteria apply. Eviction notice must have been correctly served before you can claim. Restricted claims for existing tenants in the first 90 days when product first purchased. Residential landlords only.
So I often struggled at school. Once, when we had a maths test, I looked around the room and everyone was just doing it. And I couldn't. And I began to cry. But my teacher came over and said, it might look like one big problem, but it's just a handful of small ones. And you can deal with that. I hear her voice in my head for every problem I face to this day.
Teaching. Every lesson shapes a life. Come along to the London Train to Teach event on the 9th of February. To register, search Get Into Teaching.
46 years ago, Swale Heating was born. We've installed thousands of boilers, and now the process is even easier. There's no need for a household survey. Just go to swaleheating.com. Answer a few questions, we'll recommend the best boiler, then install it at a time to suit you. Rely on us to keep you warm.
At Argos, say hello to new. Our new range is out now online and in our new catalogue, with thousands of products included. Save 25% on Silent Night, including beds and bedding with code SILENT25. With Argos, you're good to go. Conditions apply, subject to availability. Offer ends 12th of February.
The Nigel Farage Show on LBC.
Well, I'm debating Brexit with Lord Andrew Adonis. I'm not sure we're ever going to agree, but hey. But more importantly,